Welcome to today's Table Talks. My name is Scott Kappelman, and we're so glad that you've joined us for today's video. I'm joined by my co-host, Tyce Lawbinger. Tyce, how are you?
I am good. A little tired, but I'm good.
You've had a busy last few days.
I have, yeah.
You've been hosting some study halls for our college students.
Since Wednesday.
Since Wednesday. And you've done one every night.
I have, yeah.
Including Saturday, which you got to close a little early.
We did, yep.
But, I mean, you've had students come and use our office to study.
Mm-hmm. It's been great, though. I mean, serving the church. We love to serve the church.
Yeah.
But thank you all both for helping last night.
Well, that was a simple little transfer. You were trying to celebrate Brooklyn's birthday and fix a supper for her. I had a meeting to attend at 6. Sarav had a meeting to go to at 7. So we kind of played Ring Around the Rosy here to get it covered.
But you ended up with a piece of cake out of it.
Yeah, I did, because you brought some cookie cake to me. And I was thinking maybe today you'd bring me another piece.
Well, Brooklyn took the whole thing to work.
Oh,
and
no.
When you all were talking about surgery, I don't know what surgery or what, I was talking to her and asking where it was. And she said she took the whole thing to work. She said she's bringing it back, though.
I figured her coworkers wiped it out.
Well, that's what I was scared of, too. I was like, I thought you were just taking a couple pieces for him. She took the whole box.
Okay, well, that explains why there was no more today.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
I'm glad I ate a few other cookies at lunch, so I didn't have to come back and be starving. So anyway, all right, we're going to talk a little bit about Christmas today in today's video, because we're anticipating there are going to be some parents watching, and you could be contemplating whether or not to purchase a cell phone for your child. And so today's entire episode is devoted to this topic of when should children be given a cell phone.
Yes, and just to clarify, for my purpose and the viewer's purpose, we're talking cell phones, not just tablets, not like the ability to contact and access internet anytime, anywhere.
That's right.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, so there were many ways that we looked at this before we started, but we decided to make sure today's video was primarily just about cell phones.
Yeah.
So let's start by asking, when did you get your first cell phone?
So I cannot remember. It was upper middle school. And so it was either, I believe it was 7th grade, could have been 8th grade.
Now, was it a full smartphone or it was just a regular flip phone?
It was a starter phone. Yep.
Okay. But you could call,
I could call text. There was a touch screen on it, but you couldn't, there's no apps or anything. And you could not access the internet, but you could. It was touchscreen for the numbers, and then you slide open, and then you could text on the bottom side. It's kind of like a BlackBerry.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yep, that was my first phone.
I think Cardi Beth, our oldest daughter, may have had one of those first. Yep. Same type.
Yeah, but it was good.
So I'm old enough to go back way before this.
To the bag phone.
You're exactly right.
Oh, that was a guess. Come on.
Kelly and I had gotten married. We were traveling a lot during that time because we were in New Orleans Monday through Friday. Then I was serving a church on the weekends in Amite County. Yeah. So that was 2 hours from New Orleans. And then our parents lived another 2 hours away. So sometimes we'd go all the way to Jackson, which was about 3.5 hours. Then we'd go back to the church field. Then we'd go back to New Orleans. So because of all of the travel, bag phones did come out.
Yeah.
And we got one and put it in our car. Yeah. And we were given maybe 10 minutes a month that we could use, even though we were paying who knows what.
Yeah.
But the bag phone was about this big, about that wide. Did your parents have one?
Not that I know of. I'm sure they did, but before my time.
I remember the first day we got it, we were driving back toward New Orleans, and she wanted to see if it worked.
Used all 10 minutes, didn't you?
And so she called her dad, and he was like, where are y'all? Are y'all okay? Because he didn't really know we had the bag phone. And so he thought we were in an emergency situation. And she's like, no, we're in our car. And he's like, what? And so they had a brief conversation, and she said to him, if I remember this right, I can't stay on here because we only have just a few minutes. So I just wanted to see if it worked and let you know we're doing okay, and we've got a way to call you if we have a problem.
Well, there you go.
So that was our first phone.
That was your first phone. Now, this is going to be way off topic. Was it more convenient still to use like a payphone or like a landline than a bag phone, or was that just just a whole new thing that was convenient?
You could use a payphone, and they were still found in every community. So when you pulled off at a McDonald's or a gas station, there was a payphone that you could have used. And we all had, I guess, what would be called long-distance cards that were minutes you'd paid for, and so you could use your long-distance card, type in the payphone, and make your call.
Yeah.
But payphones don't even exist
Not really, no.
that I know of.
Mm-mm.
So that's how we would make emergency calls at that time.
Gotcha.
But anyway, we got the bag phone.
Bag phone.
But then the next iteration we got was kind of like what you're talking about. Other than it was a flip phone.
Yep.
You could just do calling or texting, but we didn't activate the text. We just used the phone part for a long time. And then you had to still pay for text.
Yeah.
Per word.
Per word.
I mean,
this is just revolutionary to me.
Yeah. So it was crazy.
That is crazy.
I mean, we were on the cheapest plan, so every word you sent, you had to pay for.
Wow.
It was crazy.
That is wild.
Okay, so that's old stuff. That's
old
like
stuff.
dinosaur era things that we don't need to talk about. But so when you got your first phone, did your parents have any limits on what you could do with the phone?
Well, the phone was the limit. Like
it just didn't have a lot on it.
I couldn't do anything. Like you couldn't. You ever receive a picture from someone with an Android and it's like super grainy?
Yes.
Yes. And so it was that, but worse because my screen wasn't good. So it just like there was not much you could do. Call and text, and I called and texted a lot of people, but that's all you could do.
When did you get your first smartphone?
High school.
Okay.
High school, yeah.
Did it have the full capabilities, or did
it? Did, yeah. It had the full capabilities. It was an Android, so not quite the same thing that an Apple person can do, but ultimately, really, Androids are a little more high tech than an Apple. Apples are very user friendly.
Yes.
And so you could really do more, but you needed a computer science degree to know how to do more on that phone.
That's what I have people who like Android devices and PCs. They say, I can do more than you can technically. And I'm like, yeah, but I may not know how to get to the things that you can do.
Exactly, yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yep.
Did your parents, at that point when you got the smartphone, did they put any limits on it?
Yeah, there was like, don't charge your phone by your bed. Like, you don't need to be on your phone at night while you're laying in bed. I had data limits, and it was very small. Like, it was, if you need to get on the internet, you got to be getting on there with a purpose.
Yeah.
There was definitely apps I could not have, and they would regularly check my apps to see.
So they did check your phone?
They did. I didn't know they were checking my phone for a while. Sometimes they would just ask to see if they could see my phone, but I didn't know they were checking my phone for a while. I also I didn't know that everything connected via the cloud. And so they could check what was going on my phone from my tablet. And so that was a good way for them to be able to do that just because I didn't know.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So based on your experience with your own parents, why do you think most parents even begin to think about the possibility of buying their child a phone?
Because they beg and plead.
You think it's because the children give them a hard time?
That was me and my siblings' experience. Yeah.
Y'all gave your parents a hard time?
Yeah.
I've got to have a phone. Everyone else has one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I had written in my list social pressure, which is what I had in mind. That the kid feels pressure. Everybody else has one. I've got to have one. Or I'm kind of out in the outcast society.
Yeah. My friends were also really older than me. I was in fifth grade, not even in the youth group yet, when I became friends with kids in the youth group. And so by the time I was in middle school, they were all sophomores in high school driving. But they were all church kids. And so my parents trusted them. But Sunday after church, we would come play football, but we'd go to McDonald's and I would ride around with them and be in their cars and wherever. So that was, I think, added help to get my parents because they're like, well, he is traveling a lot, so it'd be good to have one. And I was able to plead that case a little bit more as I begged.
You used it as leverage.
Yeah.
Wow. So. It's kind of interesting, though. This is a side note. We won't chase it too far. I find that children who grew up in ministers' homes tend to have older friends earlier than other kids.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, and I grew up in a preacher's home just like you did, I think we're exposed to so many people in our churches, and we just get to know them, and we get to hang out with them sometimes when other kids don't.
That is true. And then you kind of recognize like other kids, and they are just, not that they're mentally developing slower, you're just like, well, that's really annoying what they're doing right now. Or like, why are they still acting like this? Because you hang around as adults, even if you don't want to, because your parents have adults over.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
I had written down the 3 possible reasons why parents could buy a phone for their child.
Yeah.
social pressure, which we've already talked about, to keep up with their children in terms of tracking them, where they're going, and then emergencies. And I think if we'd have had this conversation 10 or 12 years ago, emergencies would have been one. And then the same would have been in the middle to keep up with their children, and social pressure would have been last. But I almost think it's reversed now.
I do. Yeah.
You would agree with that?
I would agree.
So did your parents keep up with you on your phone?
No.
As far as like track you where you were?
No.
They didn't have Find My Family going on?
They did not want it because they didn't want to be tracked by us.
That's the way I feel.
And my parents were the most trusting parents I have ever met in my entire life that were not uninvolved. So there's like uninvolved parents where they just let their kids do anything. I think my parents were very much like kind of let me do whatever, but they just trusted me. When I worked at Walmart, I would call them or text them, not even call them, because I'd get off my shift at 11 and say, hey, I'm going to go to the 24/7 gym and work out. I wouldn't get home until 1 a.m. I'd be out with friends who are older than me, and I'd spend the night at their house, and we would leave to go get fast food at 2 in the morning. And my parents were just like, hey, let us know. And that's fine. They were just the most trusting parents that I have ever met. And I think that was very good for me. But I can also see now that I'm married and thinking about kids, I don't think I could ever do that.
Kelly and I kind of have taken the same approach with our children. We've not tried to track them. Now, she would like to probably if she had the opportunity, but I've been very firm in saying we're not going to track them. And that kind of aggravates her at times. But she does like for them to check in with a text message and say, I'm here. And as long as she gets that, she's pretty satisfied. Yeah. And she knows in her mind, this is where they are. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I would have a conversation if I did not text in. There'd be a.
We've had many conversations. Like, we didn't get a text last night. I slept, but your mother didn't.
That's how it was for us too. Yeah.
So where were you and what were you doing and why did you not text? And it was always, well, I got busy and forgot. And I'm like, well, next time don't forget because she's not sleeping until you text. Yeah. So that's how that went. All right, let's get to the real meat of the matter. How old do you think, and you're a children's minister, do you think a child or teenager should be before he or she gets the first cell phone? Yeah,
so I am a very firm believer that my parents did a good job understanding of middle schools when everyone's involved in clubs now. Everyone's involved in extracurricular sports now. Like, people are club basketball, club soccer, all that stuff. But your parents have to take you to those things. But once you hit middle school...
Until you can drive.
Yeah, until you can drive. But once you hit middle school, you start joining team sports, like school team, and you're riding the bus. You have practice that you didn't get dropped off at. You just went to right after school. And so that's the times where you might like, hey, I got to let my parents know what's going on today.
The practice is running long, the practice got canceled.
Yeah, the practice got canceled. Or like, hey, the guys and the girls switched today, so now we're the late practice and stuff like that. So that's about the time where you need to be able to... You need to be able to contact your parents in some way. Now, whether that's go to the office, someone needs to have a phone at that point. In elementary school, no one really needs to have a phone. There's not much going on that's not scheduled because kids like schedules. Kids like routines. So when the routine gets off, everyone knows. Yeah. But middle school, kids can adapt a little bit more. And there's a little bit more nonchalance is not the right word, but they can just kind of flow with it. And so parents who don't know the schedule, they can't flow with it because they're just out of the loop. So someone needs to have a phone somewhere, or coach, teammate, office, the kid. Someone needs to have a phone.
At that point, you're somewhat advocating, even if they get to the middle school years, it's not necessarily a smartphone. No. You would say your advice would be stick with the most simple phone, flip phone that can just do the calling and the texting at that point.
Yes, and that is something. So working at Caro, the church before Crosspoint, I had some little girls that had phones, and young girls, definitely lower elementary, not my upper elementary girls, my lower elementary girls, and just the way they talked, how they interacted, and just telling them to put their phones away during. That's something that Clark battles with all the time in youth. Is are kids paying attention or are they on their phones? Well, I had to battle with that with my second graders. Wow. And it's just hard. I do have a cousin who he's young. He's younger than my younger brother by a few years. And when I'm at my grandparents' house, he just talks in quotes, essentially. Like if you like a funny video on social media where someone says something that's very quotable, I don't hear him have conversations. I just hear him say these things that other people have said. I think it's because it's so young, and those are the things that stick with you, because he has access not just to a phone, but to more what the phone can bring, the extra stuff that the phone can bring. That's just what he knows, and that's how he communicates. That's how my kids communicated at Caro. I've been very blessed here at Cross Point that our kids, I don't have that problem. I don't know if any of my kids have phones. I'm sure some of them do, but they're not on them ever.
Well, Kelly, my wife teaches second grade, and at her school, there are some students, I believe, in her class that have cell phones. Now, they're not allowed to have those out of their backpacks, but what she's discovered this year in particular is that they have Apple Watches.
Wow.
And so the children are able to still receive the messages from their parents and I guess get notifications if they've got something cut on. And they could also communicate to their parents through the phone, through the watch, because the watch is close enough in proximity to the backpack where the phone is. They still can get the information.
Yeah.
And
well,
that's
you don't
created
even need
a
that.
little bit of problem.
Yeah, because you can even buy a watch plan where it has data.
Yes,
You don't
that's
need the
correct.
phone
Yeah.
with
I
you,
think these
so.
kids, though, are probably just connecting right
via
there in the
Bluetooth.
room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's close enough.
Yeah.
So that's created a little bit of a
I
problem.
bet it has.
Yeah. So when you were at Cairo, did you ever have moments where you would say, now, for the Bible study, we're going to all put our phones on this table and you can't pick it up till we're finished?
No, because it wasn't the majority. It was
just a few.
It was a minority, and so we were able to regulate it. And once they put the phones down, then we had to regulate sitting next to people that they shouldn't be sitting next to or talking because they just cause problems. But never a no phone zone. It was just put it away.
I think Clancy in particular, maybe Eli too, had some teachers in high school that had it was like a shoe thing that goes on the back of a door. And when the students came in, everybody had to put their phone in a shoe pocket. And then they would leave it there until the end of class. They could get it and use it in the hall while they were moving. But for the most part, it was in that shoe holder.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if y'all did something like that at Cairo. No. Okay. So you're saying a middle school child at best should have a phone, in your opinion, should have a phone that can make phone calls and do text messages.
Yep.
Do you have an idea of when you would suggest for a student to be getting a smartphone?
Yeah. So being just out of that age, very recently, I'm not that old. I'm 22. And so I'm removed. I'm removed enough that I can tell I'm removed. Like I don't understand a lot of the things going on now, but I am close enough to be able to sympathize. And so I do understand just the social impact on the child. And as parents, there is that fine line you got to walk of, well, is this good parenting? Is the good parenting of not giving my phone good enough that it's not damaging my kid in the social aspect of what they're having to deal with now at school because they are getting picked on or they are getting bullied, or there's just the questions of, hey, why don't you have a phone? And there's the embarrassment that they're feeling every day. And that embarrassment to them, because it means so much, is shame. It's like puppy love. We say a middle school relationship is puppy love, but to them it's still love. And so there is that sense. And so there is a fine line parents have to walk across. But I would say once you get by the time you get your permit, the kid should probably have a smartphone at that point.
So that'd be around 16 in Mississippi.
16 in Mississippi is a permit?
I'm sorry. You get your permit at 15. You get your driver's license at 16.
Okay.
I could probably understand the concept on that.
Now I'm on the side that you don't need a smartphone. Like I am currently looking to change phone providers, and I know I need a smartphone because I work and I need those capabilities to be able to access my nursery schedules, and I need to be able to email people wherever I'm at. But I no longer have internet on my phone. I have had Brooklyn set a 0-minute time limit on Safari and Google. And so the more I'm away from the social aspect of high school and college, the more I'm realizing this is not something that I need 24/7 access to, because it can cause so many problems. And it's also just so time consuming.
Well, you said before we started, and I thought this was an interesting thought, that most high school students at this point have some type of tablet that's provided at some level by the school.
Yeah.
Or they
Chromebook,
get
tablet, computer, something.
And so the ability to get on the internet for searches and things of that nature is still at their disposal, even if it's not through the phone.
Yeah. And what do you need out? So, I mean, yes, the school blocked games. I get, like, you want to play games.
Yeah, because the schools usually do have some kind of governor to keep it from going certain places.
Yep. So outside of games, what more are you looking up on your phone that's not just Google searches that the school is not allowing you to get on, that your phone has access to? Typically, it's porn. And that's just what it is. I mean, maybe it's a book that you want to read. Maybe it's a website, like to play a game, like I said, or to watch a movie. Most of those movies are probably pirated that teenagers are watching. But really, my side is we have a way to communicate via our tablets, our computers. We can email our parents. It's formal and weird, but we can email our parents.
Yeah.
You can look up whatever you need. That's what I do now. I use my work computer and my home computer to Google search anything I need because it's quick, it's easy. You can't take it with you anywhere. It's just got to be in the home because anything else is just a very slippery pathway for teenagers and young boys or young girls to find porn.
Okay, so that brings me to the last part of our discussion today. You've actually written down some pros and cons.
I do, yeah.
And part of your con list comes out of what you just said. So you've got one pro. So let's start with the cons, and then we'll go back to the one pro.
I really wanted to have, I will preface, I really wanted to have more positives. I tried, because like I said, I can sympathize, and I understand what it's like for them and what they're going through. Yeah. And there's a lot of positives that you see in the moment, but being outside, I only have one pro. The negatives are, what I had first is tracking. I think that is just a negative for all sides. Because parents don't need that. That is just not good parenting. If you feel the concern to track your kids, and you probably haven't raised your kids right, which is harsh to say, but I'm going to say it because I'm on this side of the mic and I can talk to a camera.
You and I are on the same page. That's how I felt. If the parent has raised the child in the correct way, he or she is going to do 90% of the time what's supposed to be done.
That is true. And it's also hard to say, but like, if you want it for safety for when your child's driving and they get in a wreck, there's nothing you can do in that moment.
That's what I've always said.
The wreck has happened.
I agree.
And it is hard. That's hard to know.
There's nothing you can do.
There's nothing more you can do.
The emergency personnel are the people who need to be there first.
Besides put yourself in danger rushing over there.
That's right.
So second is access to porn. I think that is worse one-sided than tracking. I think the reason I have tracking, number one, is because I think it's bad for both sides, the child and the parent. But access to porn is the absolute worst.
And those numbers are growing, not just for guys, but now for girls.
Yeah,
the girls are engaging in it more and more.
At the Children's Ministry Conference I went to, the average age is now for guys to be first contact with porn is 6 to 7 years old, which is just terrifying.
It's mind-boggling.
That is mind-boggling. And then for girls, it's 8 to 9.
Which is not that far behind.
Not that far behind, nope.
And the numbers are even showing right now the growth in the women's side of engaging in porn, not just at the children's level, teenage level, adult level.
Yep.
It's growing exponentially.
And even just, this is a whole different topic, but just books. I mean, books are just crazy. And you go to Barnes & Noble, and you'll see the romance section. It is the most colorful section in there because all the books have these pastel colors, these neon colors, and it just attracts you to it. Yeah. And these drawings on front, and then you read it, and it's as filthy as porn is.
Right.
But
okay, so we're back to the cell phones.
Back to this. The next is 24-hour simulation.
I agree with this.
This is the biggest struggle that I am dealing with in kids ministry. Is just, can kids sit and focus? And if you're being stimulated 24/7, being taught is not stimulating. What I'm doing is not stimulating to them. And my job is not to stimulate them 24/7. My job is to help them grow their faith. Yeah. And lead them down a path that direction to Christ.
And I think Kelly was on our Kappelman Leadership Podcast, my wife. She did a couple of summer episodes, and I think she talked about this a little bit, but it is so important if you're a parent to keep your children away from screens of any kind. That's television, it's cell phones, it's iPads, it's any device, as much as you can the first 3 to 6 years of their life. Yeah. Because it's going to give them a greater ability to focus. The constant changing of the images is overstimulation.
It is.
And a lot of kids cannot now sit in a classroom and learn effectively, just like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because they've been overstimulated from the day they were born. They were set in front of a TV.
Mm-hmm.
They were given a device. They were given a phone. And it's too much stimulation for the brain at that point.
It is. Yeah,
So-
and that's one of my points. At some point, a parent has to swallow their pride and be like, it's okay if my kid cries in public.
Yes.
Like, I'm not going to give them a phone because that's just going to cause issues later on down the line.
You can give them a coloring book,
You can.
a coloring page. That stimulates the mind
Yeah.
to think and be creative.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. And then my final 3 negatives, they all kind of go together, is social media, unfiltered messaging. So no like tracking in the messages. There's no adult around, or just the fact that you won't say everything face to face that you would say over a screen.
that's correct.
And then the loss of contact. Just this. what me and you were
Inability to
doing.
communicate. with
Yep,
people.
inability to
Yeah.
communicate. And so that makes the unfiltered messaging worse, and that makes the social media worse.
Yeah.
It's a cycle because social media causes it, and then the loss of it makes social media more.
All right. So, what's your positive?
My positive is contact in case of change of plans. And so I just honestly like
Back to a phone call
Yeah.
or a text message.
yes. And so honestly, so phones do a lot of good things. Like I said, for my job, I use it a lot, and I am on the low end of that, being a minister, of how much I use my phone. Like, I don't have a work phone.
Yeah.
And there are people that need work phones because they just have to have this. We're just moving to that. That's what the world is now. And
Yeah.
so there are positives, but once you get out of high school, but in high school, there's social positives of just, hey, there's not the shame or the embarrassment. But really, the main positive that is just objective, this is a positive, is if there's a change of plans, you can let someone know.
Right.
Emergencies, not a big a deal anymore because everyone has a phone.
Yeah.
If there's, again, worst situation, a school shooting, everyone's going to know. Everyone's going to know.
Yeah.
Probably before the police know.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to know.
Yeah.
And so someone on the team's going to have a phone. Coach's going to have a phone. School's going to have a phone. Teacher's going to have a phone.
Yeah.
Someone's going to have a phone.
And they're going to issue some statements on social media to alert
Oh,
people.
yeah, they are.
So everybody's going to know. And going back to your illustration about the car wreck, as parents, you can't rush in there.
You cannot.
The police themselves are going to keep you at a perimeter.
That is true.
So there's nothing really you can do.
No. So emergencies aren't the biggest thing, but change of plans are. And like you
Yeah.
said, like Kelly struggles, and my mom struggled. Like, they can't go to bed if they don't
Yeah.
know what's going on. Not that it's an emergency. It's just, hey, it'd be
It's a
nice to
peace
know.
of mind.
It's a peace of mind. Just, hey, I know the plans have changed. Like, practice has changed, or hey, I'm heading out. Like, I know we said we're gonna be at my friend's house, but their mom's offering to take us to dinner. Well, that's great to know. I'm so happy that she's doing that for you.
Yeah.
But thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
And that's just a good thing that you don't have to ask your friend, like, hey, can you text my mom for me? Or can you call my mom for me? Like, it's just nice to be able to send a quick text on the road.
Yeah. I like it. Okay. So Tyce's recommendation, and I'm going to sign off 100% with him, is we both feel like until a child is in the teenage years,
Yeah.
initially it needs to be the most limited type of phone possible, mainly talking and texting,
Yeah.
and then perhaps giving consideration to a smartphone at 15 or 16 once the child begins to drive. And so those are our recommendations. Now, again, you're the parent. You've got to make the final choice on whether to buy your child a phone for this Christmas or not.
Yeah.
But we wanted to get this information to you as a piece of information for you to consider in the process. Any final thoughts you have?
No, I mean, ultimately, like, it's just the age we're moving to. And so we are going to have to adapt to it. Kids are going to have to adapt, but we just also have to be weary that we're not giving. There's positives and negatives, and we just have to be weary of what the negatives are. And while the positives are so in your face, the negatives are, you're not going to see the negatives of phones until years later.
That's right.
And that's just the issue with it. And so that's just something you got to wrestle with in your mind. Wrestle with God through prayer.
Just as we've talked, this is the one thought that has popped in my head, and I'll offer this as my last piece of advice because we're at 30 minutes, I can see on our timer, and we didn't mean to go this long. But it may come down to the parents being able to discern when the child has self-control.
That is good.
Because if the child has no self-control in any other area of life, the child's not going to have self-control in the use of the phone. It's going to get out of hand. They're going to chase things they don't need to chase. And so there's got to be maybe some evidence of the child demonstrating the ability to self-govern himself or herself, so that the phone's use doesn't go in the paths that it doesn't need to go.
Yeah.
That's just a final thought.
That is really good.
Okay. So we'll finish with that. I hope you've enjoyed today's table talk. If you've enjoyed it, give us some good likes on YouTube. Maybe share it with some other people. And then we hope you will have a great week and come back and join us for our next table talks.